Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Ms. Ihe Jerica, please call roll.
Assembly members Anderson.
Present.
Carter.
Present.
Cole.
Here.
Hardy.
Here.
Howdigi.
Here.
Kasama. Miller.
Here.
Monroe Moreno.
Here.
O'Neill. Roth.
Here.
Torres Fawcett.
Here.
Yeager. Urick. And Chair Marzola.
Here, please mark Assembly Member Kasama absent excused, and please mark members present as they arrive. Welcome to our audience in Carson City, anyone joining us in Las Vegas and over the internet. Today we will begin with an overview of the State Contractors Board, and then we will hear Assembly Bill 56. Before we get started, I would like to make a few housekeeping announcements. Members of the public may provide testimony in various ways, all of which are listed on the agenda. When testifying, please turn the microphone on to speak and off to listen. If you have handouts for the committee, please provide 20 copies to the committee secretary prior to your testimony. In addition, exhibits and amendments must be submitted electronically as a PDF file to our community manager no later than noon on the business day before our meeting. Committee information is available on Nellis, which can be accessed through the legislature's website. You may watch our meetings through Nellis or the legislature's YouTube channel. We ask that public comments be kept to 2 minutes so that everyone interested in speaking can be accommodated. Public comment may be submitted in writing, either in addition to testifying or in lieu of. Written public comment may be submitted before, during, or up to 24 hours after the meeting has adjourned. As always, I expect courtesy and respect in all our interactions, even if we may not agree. Finally, please silence your electronic devices, especially your cell phones, during our meeting. And with that, we will move on to our first agenda item. We will have an overview of the State Contractors Board. You may come up when you're ready. Joining us today is Executive Officer David Burr, License Administrator Susan Kamish, and Fiscal Services Manager Deborah Lombard. You may begin when you're ready. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
David Behar for the record, that's B-E-H-A-R. Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. My name is David Behar and I'm the Executive Officer for the Nevada State Contractors Board. Joining me at the table is Susan Broyley-Kamish, our Board Licensing Administrator. I appreciate the opportunity to provide you with an overview of our board and share the many ways we serve and protect the public during our interactions with contractors. The Nevada State Contractors Board was established by the legislature in 1941 and is charged with promoting confidence and trust in the competence and integrity of licensees while protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Our board is comprised of 7 members, including 6 licensed contractors and 1 representative from the public. Each member serves a 3-year term upon being appointed by the governor. Our board prides itself on being self-sufficient and carries a footprint that impacts every aspect of construction throughout our state, to include professional sports stadiums, industrial center projects, casino and entertainment venues, and residential home building. Our board has offices located in both Reno and Las Vegas, Nevada, and approximately 55 staff members who perform administrative, licensing, investigative, and public outreach roles. Our board is funded solely by contractor licensing fees, and we do not receive any state general funds. All of the funds we collect from assessed fines and costs are deposited into a Commission on Construction Education account, which allows the disbursement of those funds to be earmarked in the form of grants for a variety of construction education programs. Aside from conducting monthly board meetings, we also perform a variety of other functions. These include license denial hearings, which allow applicants an opportunity to appeal the denial of an application before our board, residential recovery fund meetings, where single-family resident claimants who are harmed by a licensed contractor can obtain financial recourse of up to $40,000, and disciplinary hearings, which are conducted by administrative law judges with expertise in construction. These hearings afford homeowners and contractors an opportunity to provide evidence regarding complaints and result in a decision and order being issued by that administrative law judge. Some of the additional functions of our board that reflect our ability to be a model regulatory agency include an annual strategic plan, quarterly reports, a third-party annual audit to conduct a thorough examination of all of our board and recovery fund financials, oversight of our IT functions, website, and databases, and most recently, a newly implemented 24/7 language line to assist with instantaneous over-the-phone audio interpretations in over 240 languages for members of the public. In July of 2001, the Commission on Construction Education was established under NRS 624.570 for the purpose of funding construction education programs across our state. As previously mentioned, the Commission administers grants to qualified applicants from our construction education account. The Commission itself consists of 7 members who serve 3-year terms. 1 is a current representative from our board, and the 6 additional members are appointed by the governor. The Commission is empowered to review and rate applications for grant funding by school districts and other entities seeking to provide educational programs that build awareness and workforce development for the construction industry. The Commission also encourages applicants to submit proposals with ideas that introduce primary and secondary school students to the world of construction. In coordination with the board's public outreach efforts, the Commission also regularly sponsors educational workforce development panels at high schools across the state, which highlight the experience of construction professionals and the amazing career opportunities that exist throughout our industry. Since the Commission was created, nearly $5.2 million in grants have been awarded to support these amazing programs. As a regulatory agency, one of our primary functions consists of licensing contractors across our great state. With more than 18,000 licensees actively operating in Nevada, our board provides services that assist in making changes to a license, approving new license classifications, and automating many of our application and renewal processes online. Our licensing department is responsible for receiving and processing all new license applications, which includes a review of financial solvency, background and experience checks, the passage of trade and law exams, and the fulfillment of bonding and workers' compensation requirements. To illustrate the volume of applications we regularly encounter, during the second quarter of fiscal year 24-25, our staff processed a total of 798 new license applications. Among these, 54% were based in Nevada, while 46% were applying from out-of-state entities. To better assist applicants and licensees with these processes, we regularly offer monthly business and license contractor assistance programs, which are available in person and online at no cost to the individual. Furthermore, our board has also established partnerships with UNLV and the Legal Aid Center to offer similar programs and assistance in Spanish and promote licensure to non-English speaking communities. Another mechanism of our licensing department is our licensure by endorsement program, which was initiated to expedite licensing processes based upon individuals who may possess a license in another state which aligns with the same requirements as Nevada. This highly sought-after program allows applicants to request endorsement of a trade exam and/or experience requirements based on qualifying criteria. Currently, there are 12 participating states in this program, as well as a nationally recognized exemption through the National Association of State Contracting Licensing Association, NASCLA. Utilization of this program generally impacts around 10% of the applicants we receive and helps promote workforce development and completion of residential and commercial projects, particularly in our rural communities. The last area I'd like to highlight among our licensing operations is the implementation of our newly developed language access plan. As previously noted, this project provides preferred language services, including translation and interpreters, at no cost to the public, and specifically targets the large percentage of our state's population who may be non-English speaking and in need of access to the critical services our board provides. Another primary function of our board is to enforce and uphold the provisions of NRS and NAC Chapter 624 through our investigations department. This department is tasked with addressing all of our compliance and criminal investigations involving both licensed and unlicensed contractors and houses individuals with diverse skills that include backgrounds in both construction and law enforcement. Under current law, consumers may file a compliance complaint against a licensed contractor within 4 years of their work being performed, while complaints against unlicensed contractors may only be filed within 2 years of an incident. Although the circumstances of each complaint may vary, compliance complaints most often relate to substandard workmanship, project abandonment, money owing disputes, violations of industry standards, or unlawful or fraudulent activity. As part of their regulatory duties, investigative staff are trained to seek impartial resolutions regarding complaints and are equipped with several regulatory processes to achieve a fair and impartial outcome. Some of these include a notice to correct, administrative citations, and disciplinary hearings. It should be noted that prior to elevating a matter to a hearing, those that might receive an administrative citation from our board are afforded an opportunity to participate in an informal citation conference to explain the circumstances that may have led to this discipline. Following that conference, our board then has the ability to either affirm, amend, or even withdraw the citation. Conversely, when complaints against unlicensed contractors are validated, investigators can pursue different actions. These may include a cease and desist order, an administrative or criminal prosecution, which might involve the actual filing of a criminal case with a district attorney or the Attorney General's office, and this may elevate to misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, or even felony crime convictions. To help mitigate unlawful construction activity across our state, our criminal investigators also conduct proactive job sites on a weekly basis and engage in various national enforcement efforts. In support of the goals of our investigations department, our staff has worked tirelessly to establish partnerships and develop programs focused on increasing consumer awareness and protections. One of these efforts was the creation of a solar investigation unit, which was established in response to the increased number of consumer complaints being received that involved residential solar contractors. These complaints often involved issues related to scams, false promises of lower power bills, deceptive loan practices, complicated financial agreements, and potential workmanship issues. This specialized unit focuses solely on solar-related complaints and frequently engages various groups that include public utility representatives, solar associations, building officials, and other state agencies. The primary goals of the unit are to strategize enforcement efforts while conducting consumer education and share information and resources amongst the various stakeholders. As a result of these efforts, the unit has also initiated a solar watch list, which is a resource available on our website that provides the names and logos of solar contractors who have been suspended, revoked, or disciplined by our board for having too many complaints. Lastly, our investigations department also manages an underground economy task force, whose purpose is to combat the unlawful construction practices of individuals operating without a license across our state. This multi-agency group utilizes the resources of the Attorney General's office, Labor Commissioner, and other entities to strategically disrupt the underground construction economy that exists in our state. One of the key successes of this task force has been the creation of our unlicensed violator watch list, which posts photos and summaries of our state's most notorious unlicensed offenders on our board's website. I would next like to highlight our board's Residential Recovery Fund, which is a fund that was established in 1999 and is funded solely by assessments of licensed residential Nevada contractors. The fund's purpose is to provide owners of single-family residences who have been harmed by a licensed contractor the opportunity to claim financial recourse of up to $40,000 based upon the submission of an eligible claim that is approved by our board's Residential Recovery Fund Committee. The Funds Committee is comprised of representatives who also serve as our governor-appointed board members. To date, this fund has awarded more than $16.3 million to over 1,700 homeowners and is recognized nationally as one of the most well-respected public protection programs afforded to constituents anywhere in the United States. In addition to our recovery fund, our board's consumer outreach efforts span across all departments and operations, and regularly provide a variety of public presentations at various town hall meetings, health and safety fairs, cultural events, schools, and senior-sponsored assemblies. Many of these presentations are often geared towards individuals who reside in senior, disadvantaged, or even non-English speaking communities, and are designed to provide resources and raise awareness to assist them in a variety of different ways. As part of our ongoing outreach, we also work closely with elected officials that include the Attorney General and the Governor to provide public service announcements regarding the dangers of hiring unlicensed contractors, as well as scams involving residential pools and solar projects. Furthermore, we've also established a robust presence across social media, radio, TV, and print that include consumer alerts, industry bulletins, news releases, and easy-to-follow brochures in English and Spanish that reinforce our messaging across a variety of platforms. Highlighted on this next screen are a few of these outreach programs, most notably our annual Hammers and Hope event and recent holiday tools drive. Our annual Hammers and Hope event is an industry-wide outreach effort focused on increasing the visibility and growth of females in the construction industry. This one-of-a-kind venue fosters workforce development and consists of a panel discussion led by leading industry women, followed by mentoring sessions, a career fair, and numerous networking opportunities. In addition to the Hammers and Hope event, our most recent endeavor was the creation of a holiday tool drive to support future workforce development throughout the many trade schools in our state. In December, our board welcomed the generous donations of new and gently used tools and construction materials from the public and members of the industry. We were able to equitably deliver these much-needed items to local area high school construction programs across our state in both northern and southern Nevada. With the legislative session upon us, I wanted to now take a moment to briefly highlight two bills that the Nevada State Contractors Board brought forward this year. The first bill is AB 5, which has since been pulled by our board. The second bill is SB 16, which serves to enhance the board's authority to refuse the issuance of a license for up to 1 year for engaging in unlicensed activity, while also providing authority to the board to discipline someone who interferes or attempts to interfere with an investigation or disciplinary proceeding by threatening, harassing, or otherwise influencing a person who may provide evidence in an investigation, disciplinary hearing, or legal action. I have had the opportunity to discuss several of these matters with many of you, and I look forward to sharing more about those bills during upcoming hearings. Looking forward, in the days and months ahead, our board will remain engaged and active with members of the legislature, particularly as it relates to the governor's reorganization and modernization efforts. Members of our team and I will continue to welcome opportunities to discuss matters of importance with you, to include collaborative partnerships and public protection initiatives. We will remain steadfast in our continued pursuit of being a model regulatory agency and continue to utilize all avenues available to ensure consumers receive relevant and timely access to our information. Lastly, I would ask that each of you please take a moment to recognize the longstanding history of our board and the protections we provide on a daily basis to every constituent across Nevada. Our footprint touches every building, school, business, and home that you enter each day, and the magnitude of what we do is unlike any other board or commission in the state. With that being said, I have listed our board's contact information on the screen and would like to thank Chair Marzola and members of the committee for providing me this opportunity to share and highlight the tremendous work done at the Nevada State Contractors Board. I'm happy to answer any questions members of the committee may have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation and being here with us today. Members, are there any questions? Assemblymember Cole.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, I appreciate you. My question is on slide number 10. You mentioned the $16.3 million awarded since 2001 in the program to help homeowners. Is any of that money ever brought back into the state by going after the bad actors or insurance policies, perhaps? Thank you.
David Behar for the record.
You can go direct.
Assemblymember Cole. Oftentimes what will happen with respect to the Residential Recovery Fund, we'll order, our administrative law judge will order a decision in order, and within that order, it will put in a request for that contractor to have to reimburse that Residential Recovery Fund.
Sorry, and do you have good success in actually getting that money back? I understanding that the contractor might not have the money, right? Because they're bad actors.
David Behar for the record. It varies. It's a very fluid situation. Oftentimes, they will do that because they don't want to jeopardize their license. In other instances, for example, a company may have gone bankrupt, so they might be in a financial problem.
Committee members, any additional questions? I don't see any. I do have a couple. Since we are talking about the Residential Recovery Fund, can you tell me how much sits in that fund at the moment?
It's David Behar for the record. It varies between about $5.5 to $6 million.
Thank you. My next question is, what's the turnaround time for a contractor's license?
Susan Broyley Camish for the record. We process applications in date order, so if an application is complete when we receive it, that applicant can expect perhaps about 4 weeks before we're going to reach out to contact them for additional information or if we have questions on the information that's been submitted. If it's incomplete and we have to reach out to them a lot and they're not responding timely, that will definitely increase the time of processing an application.
Thank you. Okay, my last question. On slide number 8, between 2023 and 2024, you had over 2,500 complaints. How many investigators do you have working on those complaints?
David Behar for the record. We have a total of 9 compliance investigators that focus primarily on the complaints regarding licensed contractors. 3 of those are in northern Nevada and the remainder are down south. And then we also have criminal investigators that will investigate the criminal complaints. And so we have 2 of those in our northern office. We have a supervisor down in our southern office, 1 fraud investigator, 1 background investigator, and then 3 additional criminal investigators.
Great, thank you. Committee members, last chance. Assemblymember O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. On Chair's question asking the time limit from, maybe it wasn't clear, start to finish, you said 4 weeks later, you'll contact them for additional information, and then depending on what happens. So you really didn't give me a response to that. Let's say everything's perfect. How long is it going to take me to get my license?
Susan Broyley Camish for the record. Have you passed an exam in Nevada or another state yet? There's a lot of variables when you have a contractor's application. Applicants must pass a law exam and a business exam. They also must provide fingerprints and pass our background investigation. That can take up to 90 days, depending on how long the Nevada Department of Public Safety and the FBI take to get us back that information. Let's say that an applicant has passed an exam that complies with our licensure by endorsement, and they have a qualifier who has already passed the law exam. So our exams are not an issue. We have fingerprints back because they're on another application. If we have everything we need and it's ready to roll, we could probably issue that license in about 4 weeks.
So, okay, so I just graduated from college with an engineering degree, and I want to get a contractor's license. So
Did you
I need
need
to
a
take
follow-up
test.
question?
Yes, may I? I'm sorry, Chair.
Go ahead.
So I've got to take a test, which is offered how often?
Susan Broyley Camish for the record. In Las Vegas, exams are offered daily. In
Okay.
Reno, they are offered 6 days a week. In Elko, they are offered 5 days a week,
So I can do that fairly quickly?
depending on, yes,
Well, depending on what?
depending on the school and the exam center's availability to your exams. We don't have control over what the exam center
So they're only,
schedule is.
they only allow so many people in each day. Is that what you're saying? To take the
Susan-
test?
Susan Borley-Camish for the record. I don't know what their process is. I know our we use PSI as our exam center, and they offer exams for other agencies like the Realtor Board or other agencies that offer exams. So they're not solely offering contractors board exams.
So it could take I'll summarize this, tell me if I'm wrong. It could take several months to get my license between the exam, the fingerprint background, and processing by the contractors board. Is that fair?
Susan Borley-Camish.
Just starting out fresh.
Susan Borley-Camish for the record. Yes, it could take several months, yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you so much, Chair, for this. And thank you for the presentation. So as I was starting to look through the solar information and some of the other items, the great item, but if there's ever any employee issues, does that also come into play under your body, or is that a consideration from a different organization? So let's say that somebody's trying to find a job to work for those solar companies. Is that something that you would deal with, or is that a different organization that would deal with that if there are issues with it?
In order to, Susan Borley-Camish for the record, in order to obtain an electrical license which would allow solar work to be a qualified individual on a license, you must have the experience to do that. So while that is an employee, that's also somebody who's on our website and is responsible for all of the work that that company performs. They may have other employees under that company that are not, haven't gone through our background check because they're not our qualified individual.
If I may? Thank you so much. So just to make sure that I've got that accurate, that it's, let's say that there's a subcontractor. They might have to go through instead the, I don't know, Labor Commission instead of through you. Is that accurate?
Subcontractors typically hold a license through our agency, so employees of subcontractors may have to go through the Labor Commissioner's office, yes. Oh, Susan Borley-Camish for the record.
Members, any additional questions? I don't see any. Thank you so much for being here. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 56. This measure revises provisions relating to the licensing of certain providers of health care. Do we have Ms. Bradley? There she is.
Yes.
Welcome, and thank you for being with us today. You may begin when you're ready. Just remember to state and spell your name for the record, please.
Okay. Sarah Bradley, Deputy Executive Director on behalf of the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners, and my name spelling is Sarah Bradley. And I'm here today to give you an overview of Assembly Bill 56. Essentially, for the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners, what this bill will do is streamline and simplify burdensome continuing medical education requirements. So right now, existing law requires our licensees, physicians and physician assistants, and anesthesiologist assistants to take medical education in a variety of categories, many of which may not be relevant to what they actually practice. And so we are attempting to streamline that process with this bill. The next thing that this bill does is removes and this is in Section 2, it removes the exemption for inactive physician assistants to pay an inactive registration fee. That's not consistent with how we handle inactive license registrations for other license types, such as physicians, medical doctors. And so we are removing that exemption from them so that we're consistent. And then the fee that the medical doctors pay, what we're proposing in this bill that the inactive physician assistants would pay is 1/2 of the regular registration fee. The third thing that we're doing in this bill is increasing the cap for the biennial registration of a physician and making corresponding changes related to that. Right now, the maximum set in existing law, and this is in section 3 of the bill, is $800. And that has not been changed since 1997. So that's when it was set at that rate. And so we are asking to increase that max to $1,200, $1,200. Our intent is not to go directly to the max, but we wanted flexibility to do so with these changes. Again, in that same section, we've added the fee for the inactive biennial registration of a physician assistant. And then also we have added, we've increased the inactive status registration for physicians. So right now it was 400, and under the new bill it will be 600 because it's 1/2 of the full fee. And again, this is the max fee. This is not the fee that we plan to start charging immediately. And then the fourth thing that we are adding in this bill is the ability of the board, and it's really our licensing staff, to be able to cooperate with entities that are credentialing our licensees. And we believe this will be speed up the time that it takes for a licensee to be credentialed. So currently what is happening is, for example, a physician will apply to the board for a license. They will complete their application file, they will get their license issued, and then they have to wait again to be credentialed at a hospital or other employer. And so the intent of the change in section 6 is to allow the board to provide to an employer of the licensee or an entity credentialing the licensee copies of documents and other information we obtain during verifying their educational skill, competence and skill. And so the goal is to share that information with them. And we believe this will help practitioners be able to be practicing in a quicker time period when they're coming to Nevada for licensure or a new graduate starting practice, because that second process there with credentialing can take some time as well. And that is the end of the changes with regard to the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. Now, in this bill, the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners work together with the Nevada State Board of Osteopathic Medicine. So there are some changes that relate to that board. And it's my understanding that their executive director is not able to be here today. And so because we work together on those changes, I feel like I can summarize those for you as well. And of course, if there's any questions regarding that board's practices, I probably will defer those questions if that's acceptable to you. So the first change, and this is starting on section 7 of the bill, the Nevada State Board of Osteopathic Medicine would like to change their renewals from an annual cycle to a biennium, like our board. So our board has a biennium renewal cycle. They're currently renewing annually. So under the proposed changes, physician assistants and anesthesiologist assistants would renew every odd year on December 31st. And then they would renew the doctors of osteopathic medicine, the DOs. They would renew every even numbered year by December 31st. And there are multiple corresponding changes throughout the bill to update the fact that they're going from an annual cycle to a biennium cycle. The second change that this makes for the Board of Osteopathic Medicine is, again, continuing medical education changes, really to be consistent with how our board is doing it as well. They have those same burdensome specific requirements and specific areas that may or may not relate to the areas in which their licensees practice. And so the goal is to encourage CMEs to be taken in those specialized areas, just like with our proposed changes, but not require those courses per se. And the other thing for them, which is significant, is right now, because they have an annual renewal cycle, they have a 35-hour requirement for CMEs. So they're requiring 70 hours every 2 years. And their goal in these changes is to reduce that to 40 for the biennium, which is the same as what the BME has. We have 40 required in a biennium. And so they're taking quite a bit more than medical doctors are, and I think that's a burden for them as well.
Mrs. Bradley, thank you for your overview, but if I can ask you to actually go through the bill itself, we would really appreciate it.
So section by section?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, so section 1 of the bill removes the requirements in multiple areas for continuing medical education for medical doctors, and this is a change for the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. And instead of requiring courses in each of the areas listed, the board will encourage a holder of a license to take courses in those areas that are specified. So the specified areas are evidence-based suicide prevention and awareness, which may include without limitation instruction concerning skills and knowledge that the licensee needs to detect behaviors that may lead to suicide, approaches to engaging other professionals in suicide intervention, and the detection of suicidal thoughts and ideations and the prevention of suicide. It also removes, and the requirements that are being removed completely is overview of acts of terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, personal protective equipment required for acts of terrorism. Those were added after 9/11, and we believe those CMEs are not necessary for all of our providers at this time. Also, we're removing exposure to injuries includes by chemical and biological weapons, surveillance and reporting for acts of terrorism, and information regarding the use of the Health Alert Network. In that same section, removing provisions requiring that each psychiatrist and physician assistant practicing under the supervision of a psychiatrist take courses in cultural competency, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The reason for removing that is this was targeted just for physicians practicing in psychiatry, and we believe this is a part of the course of instruction that they receive in school, as well as their physician assistants. And so it wasn't necessary to require them to take these specific courses in this specific area when none of the other license types are being required to do so. Also removing requirements that says that we must allow a holder of a licensee to receive credit toward the total amount of continuing education by the board for courses in genetic counseling and genetic testing. We already do that. We don't need to have a specific provision. As long as the course is certified as an approved course by the American Medical Academy and it's a Category 1 approval, they would get credit regardless of the topic because that entity only credentials valid courses related to medical topics. Also removing here the requirement that physicians and physician assistants working in emergency medical services take 2 hours in the stigma, discrimination, and unrecognized bias toward persons who have acquired or at high risk of acquiring HIV within 2 years after beginning to provide or supervise the provision of such care. And then removing again the medical consequences courses regarding active terrorism, because that's also included again twice. And we will be encouraging instead the ones I started to tell you, and then additionally prescribing of opioids and care for persons with an addictive disorder. There currently are several topics, and they're on the next page in existing law, wherein a licensee can receive extra credit, and that's how they're quote unquote encouraged to take courses in a specific area. And so this way we thought the licensees would have more autonomy in the courses they're picking. And the basic bare bone requirement after this would be said and done would be they take 40 hours every 2 years, 2 of those in ethics, this is in regulation, and then 20 in their field of specialty. And that gives them 18 hours in other topics that they either find interesting or are related to their practice, whatever it might be. And the way the encouragement works is they get up to 4 extra hours. So it would allow them to take 36 hours potentially and get 40 hours of credit if they took 4 hours in courses that are encouraged as listed here. Again, removing requirements regarding suicide, things that we already are now going to be encouraging. So this strike through on page 6 is already dealt with on that first page. Adding in the encouraging of courses in those areas. And then number 5 there on page 6, you can see the other areas we already encourage. So courses related to pediatric cancer and interpreting family history. And so that's the model we're using to encourage these CME courses. And then again, removing other references to the courses that we're taking out here in section 1. In section 2, this is removing a reference that says that the board shall exempt an inactive physician assistant from paying the application fee for biennial registration prescribed by NRS 630.268. In section 3, we are increasing the max amount for a biennial registration of a physician from $800 to $1,200. And again, that has not been increased since 1997. And so we're just hoping to get more leeway there regarding fees that are charged. In this same section on page 9, there is now going to be a fee for biennial registration for a physician assistant who's on inactive status. So we're proposing, it's half of the max for them. We don't charge the max for them, but it's half here. So it's being proposed as $400. But really it will be less than that. And then $600 is being added or actually increased. So for biennial registration for a physician who is on inactive status, just to coincide with the change from $800 to $1,200, this is now half of the new max of $1,200. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, on page 9 here, the red strike throughs and the blue font, at least in the bill that I've printed, is not quite accurate, but there's 2 new changes there. On page 10, in that same section, we're specifying that the fee that would be charged to the inactive physician assistants would not be more than 1/2 of the amount that we currently charge. So if they're active, this will just be 1/2. And again, that's to be consistent and fair with what physicians pay when they are inactive. Adding in section 4, a corresponding change regarding the payment of a biennial fee for registration for an inactive physician assistant. Moving on to section 5 of the bill. This is striking through a reference to training required pursuant to NRS 630.2535. The reason that's being repealed is that, or this reference is because that whole provision is being repealed under these proposed changes. And in section 6, this is where we're adding in the ability to cooperate with other individuals that are credentialing our licensees. So section 6, it's an amendment to NRS 630.336, and it's adding subsection 7, which says if it's authorized by a licensee, the board shall provide to an employer or an entity credentialing the licensee copies of any documents and other information obtained by the board during the application process for the issuance of the license of the licensee, including without limitation copies of documents and other information verifying the completion of their educational program, completion of postgraduate training, any malpractice insurance maintained by the licensee, and then privileges of the licensee to practice at a hospital, clinic, or other facility. So those are the end of the changes with regard to the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. And then now, if you'd like, Madam Chair, I would continue with the changes related to the Board of Osteopathic Medicine.
Please.
Okay. So section 7 for that board, again, it's incorporating this change from, instead of requiring them to renew every year, which is a burden on staff, this way they will have a biennial renewal. So section 7 says that anesthesiologist assistants will renew biannually on the odd numbered year by December 31. Section 8 just updates the references to the fee that an anesthesiologist assistant will pay to make sure that it's clear it's a biennial fee, not an annual fee. Section 9 states that a physician assistant will renew by December 31 of each odd year. Section 10 updates just the reference there and adding add renewal to that provision. I think that's just corresponding change to go ahead and make this biennial change fully worked through in the statutes. Section 11, again, this is changing. This is for the physician assistant, saying that it's a biennial fee, and this has to do with simultaneous licensure, because there are provisions with regard to simultaneous licensure between the Osteopathic Board of Medicine and the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. And so this is just referring to the fact that that fee for them at the Osteopathic Board will now be a biennial fee. Section 12, this is the one that clarifies that physicians will license, so doctors of osteopathic medicine physicians will license by December 31 of even numbered years. Updating references there to fees to assure that it says biennial and biennium so that it's consistent throughout the chapter. The top of page 17 in the same section, which is section 12, this is where you see the change going from 35 to 40 hours for continuing medical education. But again, remember that currently they're having to do 35 hours every single year. This would be 40 hours every 2 years, which is consistent with the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners and what we require for our licensees. There's other references in this chapter regarding the biennial registration and how they're going to audit continuing medical education when they do their biennial renewal. Again, similar to how we're handling the specialized areas of continuing medical education in this provision here, they're opting to do the encourage model. So the board shall encourage each licensee to complete courses in the following areas. The areas specified here are evidence-based suicide prevention and awareness, and then also the screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment approach for substance use disorder, prescribing of opioids, and care for persons with an addictive disorder. So instead of requiring those, it will be encouraged under that similar model that the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners is hoping to add. In the same section, repealing the requirements of courses in the areas I just mentioned. And so basically going to the encouragement model rather than the requiring model. Continued removals on the following page, on page 19, regarding encouraging courses in those areas instead of requiring them. I believe some of them are actually removed outright if they weren't in the specified list that is on page 17. So the one on page 17 will be encouraged and the rest are actually being removed. The bottom of page 19 updates a reference from annual to biennial and specifies that members of the armed forces are exempt from payment of a biennial license during their active duty status. Section 13 is again making corresponding changes to ensure that they are now going to be on a biennial renewal and removing references to annually and year. Section 14, again, making corresponding changes regarding biennial registration to ensure that that is consistent throughout their chapter. Section 15, same as that, changing references to annual, biennial, simultaneous registration. This is for physician assistants that are doing biennial registration licensure with both boards. And so just specifying that their fee will be a biennial fee, not an annual fee for that. Section 16, again, making updates regarding year, turning that to biennium. Section 17, updating references to annually to say biennial or biennially as appropriate in that section. Section 17, this is fees for the Board of Osteopathic Medicine. And so again, increasing the fees here to account for the fact that it won't be an annual renewal, it will be a biennial renewal. So the fees are being doubled from $800 to $1,600 for osteopathic physicians, renewal fees for an osteopathic physician from $500 to $1,000. And then the other updates are for licensure fees for physician assistants, updating, again, doubling those fees so that it's consistent with going from annual to biennial. And then for anesthesiologist assistants, there actually was not a fee, interestingly enough, for renewal for anesthesiologist assistants in the existing bill in last session in 2023. So adding those fees in here completely because they just weren't in there. There was a fee for the issuance of a license, but not for the renewal of a license for anesthesiologist assistants. Reference in section 2 to prorating the fees so that if a license is expiring less than 12 months after it's issued, the fees charged can be prorated, which I think is fair to the licensee, and that's also what we do at the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners with regard to when licenses are issued. Section 19, this is removing a reference to CMEs that have been repealed or been removed by these changes in this bill. So that's on page 26, just removing that reference because it won't be accurate, assuming these changes are approved. Corresponding changes on 27, and then repealing on page 28 and 29, repealing NRS 630.2535 and NRS 633.473. Those are the ones that had been omitted in those previous sections I talked about. And so just actually repealing these because we aren't going to be requiring outright these CMEs any further. And that is a summary of the bill. I would like to note that Dr. Spiritos, who is the president of the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners, is there in Las Vegas. If you have questions for him, he is here as well.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Committee members have several questions, so we will start with Assembly Member Torres Fawcett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation and for going through the piece of legislation. So I have a number of questions and concerns, and I'm going to be honest, I think that this bill is quite offensive. You're proposing changes that the legislature has made in the last 3 sessions, including the elimination of cultural competency. And I was a key stakeholder in that conversation with cultural competency, especially as it applies to psychiatrists. In fact, last legislative session, in good confidence with this association and with this board, I agreed that we wouldn't increase the requirements to 6 for cultural competency hours. I regret that decision now. I wish we had, because clearly it's not being taken seriously. So I'm trying to understand what reasoning there is behind eliminating this essential training as it applies to cultural competency, suicides, and opioid usage.
Assembly Member Torres Fawcett, Sarah Bradley, Deputy Executive Director for the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners, for the record. The rationale is really just to simplify the requirements. The requirements are confusing. We get lots and lots of questions on them. The requirements are confusing for our licensees, and it's our understanding that these requirements are not the same in other jurisdictions. And so the intent was not to eliminate them completely. The intent was to go out for the model that we have where we encourage courses in certain areas. And so this gives the licensee more choice about courses they want to take and possibly get extra credit for taking courses in this area. So the intent is not to completely get rid of all of the requirements. We understand that suicide prevention and courses regarding opioids and things like that are very important, and we're not saying they're not. The intention is really to streamline the process for our licensees because it's a hard thing for them to navigate what courses they need to do in what areas. And I believe that the Nevada Psychiatric Society was At least they were one of the stakeholders that told us that they were offended. They didn't. Anyway, I have received information that they believe that they are culturally competent. And that's part of their training to be in psychiatry and mental health is being culturally competent. So they didn't understand why they were singled out for that. And so that's part of the rationale for removing that. So the intent is not to be disrespectful or anything improper. The intent is really just to make it easier for our licensees and our physicians as they come to Nevada and get licensed and they meet their continuing education requirements.
Thank you. Chair, and a follow-up, if I may. And I want to make it clear that the psychiatrists were added because they're part of a mental health professional. And so when I brought the piece of legislation in the 21 session, it applied specifically to mental health professionals, and that would include psychiatrists. And, you know, quite honestly, as a woman of color who has had my own difficulty accessing quality care and who has watched my father have his challenging accessing quality care, I believe that Nevadans deserve access to that cultural competency and that we have a responsibility to educate our medical professionals on that, as well as the other requirements in this statute. I do not believe that the term like strongly encourage is not mandating, and I think that the intent of the legislature is for us to mandate it. So I hope to see that we continue this mandate because this piece of legislation did pass with bipartisan support. Thank you.
Vice Chair Howdigi.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to say that I completely agree with my colleague and her remarks. And I also want to touch on another area, though, of things that you're omitting and encouraging these practitioners to do, and it's specifically around the training on addiction and opioid disorders. Again, if you're just encouraging people to do this, there's no saying that they will select this area as a focus for their continuing education. And I think when we're dealing with medical professionals who deal with controlled substances, they should have training on addiction issues and suicide issues. So my question is, why are you removing these? And can you give me can you give us a walkthrough of if you are a physician's assistant, because they're one of the health professionals that this would apply to, and you are going to start your continuing education, do they just get a menu? Is it like, do they go online? Do they get a menu of areas that they can select to do their continuing education on? And what kind of training outside of their continuing education are they receiving this training? And I know you had mentioned they're receiving it when they get their license, but if they are 10 years into their profession, are they never, unless it's mandated, receiving training on suicide prevention or addiction prevention or cultural competency prevention?
Assemblymember Howdigi, Sarah Bradley, Deputy Executive Director on behalf of the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. I mean, the requirements would be, if this were to pass, that they would have to do 40 hours every 2 years, 20 of those in their specialty. So a licensee with a specialty dealing with patients, for example, prescribing opioids. Not all of our providers prescribe controlled substances in the same ways, deal with pain management, things like that. And so if it's your specialty, then those providers should still be taking continuing education in those areas. But as written, these requirements apply to licensees that may never see patients. We have licensees such as some radiologists, some pathologists who don't interact with patients. They review slides, they review scans, things like that. And so the intent here was really to allow the physician to take, I mean, again, they would be mandated 2 hours of ethics, 20 hours in their specialty, and then 18 hours in whatever else they choose. We also require an existing law that they're competent in the areas they practice, which means that they should be keeping up with current knowledge and education in the areas in which they practice. And so again, if they're practicing where they prescribe for pain, other things like that, there are other requirements regarding that. And so the thought here was, instead of making a sweeping requirement for everybody, we would prioritize the areas the legislature has prioritized, but prioritize them in a different way where they're encouraged and then they get double credit. Again, it was a model, and I The intent was not to upset anyone at all. It was a model that we saw with regard to geriatric care of geriatric patients, care of pediatric cancers and other rare cancers. There already is something from the legislature wherein we are to encourage courses in those areas. And so our thought was to streamline the process for our licensees and encourage multiple specialized areas that we thought the legislature was telling us were important. So the goal was not to eliminate them, but to allow the licensees that need to take those or should take those and perhaps get extra credit. And the ones that don't need to take those because their practice is different than that, give them the ability to not do that.
I appreciate that answer, but the way as written, so you're saying a medical professional who deals with controlled substances doesn't have to, the language as written doesn't have to take continuing education on suicide prevention or dealing with addiction disorders. They can, they like you mentioned, they have to take 20 hours within their specialty, but it doesn't mean it's on suicide prevention or dealing with addiction disorders. And maybe it's a technician who deals with slides, but those who are public facing should be required to take cultural competency on how to deal with elderly, with veterans, with those who, people of color, those with different religious backgrounds, or those who are suffering from disability. The language as written eliminates those requirements, and it's something that I just can't support as written.
Assemblymember Miller.
Thank you, Chair. My question, again, I agree with my colleagues here on the dais. And again, not to make a statement about the quality of medical care that I and many that I know as women of color have received in this state, I will move directly to my question, which is my understanding of the difference between, because I've also visited both practitioners, MDs and DOs, and it was always, the way it was explained to me was that a DO is more about, I don't know if holistic's the correct word, but maybe the correct word is whole person, that they take in the whole person and environment when it comes to administering care for an individual. And so I guess I'm curious of why these eliminations, specifically on page 19, would come from that type of practice, because again, as stated, when I look at page 19, it includes a long list of Nevadans. Like all I see here is all of our Nevadans. And so I'm wondering why, specifically in the practice of DO, why this would come to eliminate such things that actually would go into their scope of practice.
Assemblymember Miller, Sarah Bradley, Deputy Executive Director, on behalf of the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners.
You can go direct.
Thank you. The exact reason for the changes with regard to the Board of Osteopathic Medicine, I'm not prepared to answer. We collaborated together on the language, and I'm familiar with at least the sections of the bills, but the reasoning and the thoughts behind the changes that they have proposed, I think would be better for that board to speak to at a later date and perhaps provide supplemental response to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate that. And so, Chair, if we could request that that be submitted to the committee. Thank you for your response.
Yes, any documentation that you're going to present, please present it to the entire committee. Committee members, any additional questions? Assemblymember Hardy.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to touch a little bit on the fees that you mentioned. So you said there would be a maximum fee of $1,200. Is there any like stipulations around when you would charge that? Are you starting there? Can they, what is there like any guardrails or thought to how that would be charged and when or increased, et cetera?
Sarah Bradley, Deputy Executive Director, on behalf of the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. The goal at this time is just to allow the flexibility to increase the fee if it's necessary. Right now, the fee that is being charged is $800. The board would be the ones to review the budget and set the fees. I don't believe that we would be, I can tell you It is my understanding we're not intending to increase to 1,200 right away. If we were to do an increase, it would be a smaller increase. Most recently, the board increased from $750 to $800, which is the max. So I've been with the board for 5 years, and that's what occurred as we went from 750 to 800. So I would anticipate any increase would be a smaller amount, but again, it's up to the oversight of the board. The board would approve that change and the budget, and they would see the rationale and the need for that change before it would be implemented.
Assemblymember Urick.
Thank you, Chair. Along the lines of what my colleague just asked with the fees, we're all in receipt of a letter of opposition to this bill coming from the Nevada State Medical Association with, or they're expressing concerns that the fee increase here might actually serve as a barrier to the physician growth that we're looking for in Nevada. Can you just give us an indication of where these proposed fee caps now would put us nationally? I mean, what are other jurisdiction charges? Are we in line with them, or would this put us, for example, above or below the mean?
Sarah Bradley, Deputy Executive Director on behalf of the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. I would have to do more specific research to answer your question more fully. I do know other jurisdictions that charge $1,200 right now. I know other jurisdictions that charge less, and I think it really varies. So if, with your permission, we'd be glad to do some research on that and present that back to you regarding the fees so that you could see the comparisons.
Committee members, any additional questions? Assemblymember Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. I think you've heard from a number of members on the dais their displeasure with some of the items to be taken away in the bills, both on page 5 and page 19. But then in addition to that, with the letter from the Nevada State Medical Association and their concerns with the fees, I won't give my personal opinions, but I would truly like to see amendments made. When you say encourage, 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 if the physicians and the occupations that this bill refers to were already taking the courses that this body required them to take, you wouldn't have to encourage them to do it. That was why the bills were brought in previous legislative sessions, because we heard it from constituents of the failures in our medical system. And we've heard it from doctors and nurses of reasons why they don't want to come and practice here. So what I would ask is that you guys get together again, look at some amended language to bring before us to get this bill to a place where we could have a better discussion and perhaps pass it. The way it's written now and the concerns from the Medical Association would make me not want to support this bill as written. Thank you, Chair.
Committee members, any additional questions or comments? I don't see any. All of my questions have been asked and answered. We have a huge problem in our state. We have a huge opioid addiction problem. Our mental health issues here are out of this world, and obviously cultural competency is very, very important in our state. So to sit here and read this bill and it be suggested that we go into an encourage model instead of required, I'm a bit confused. Can you explain to me what an encouragement or encouragement model is, where it came from? And it could be maybe I've never heard of it, so if you could please explain.
Sure. Sarah Bradley, Deputy Executive Director on behalf of the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. Let me go to some existing language, because this is where we got it from. So if you go to page 6, And if you look at what would be the new subsection 4, and it says the board shall encourage each holder of a license to practice medicine to receive as a portion of his or her continuing education training concerning methods for educating patients about how to effectively manage medications, including without limitation the ability of the patient to request to have the symptom or purpose for which the drug is prescribed included on the label attached to the container of the drug. There's a similar provision there in the new, what would be the new number 5, which is encouraging courses in rare diseases. And then there is another provision, and I may not be finding it, and I apologize just as I look here. Oh no, page 3. Sorry, subsection 3, the new subsection 3 on the bottom of page 5. This says the board shall encourage each holder of a license who treats or cares for persons who are more than 60 years of age to take continuing education in geriatrics and gerontology. So because those were existing provisions that the legislature had given us, what the board did, because the board wasn't, to be honest, a question I think arises, well, how do we encourage this? How do we do that? And the way that the board was able to come up with to do that is what I mentioned earlier. In our regulations, if a person takes courses in these 3 areas, they can get double credit up to 4 hours. And so that's how they're encouraged, but it still gives them some autonomy over taking courses that are related to their profession. Not everybody takes courses in these, needs courses in these areas for their specialty area. And so the thought that we had here was, let's continue to prioritize and encourage the areas that the legislature has told us are important. And let's add, and what we would do if this bill were to pass is we would make regulations wherein we incorporate all of these new encouraged areas, and a licensee could get potentially 4 extra hours if they take courses in those areas. So that's how we came to the idea of encouraging and how we have carried it out in the 3 areas we've been mandated to encourage to date.
Thank you for your response. I'm like almost everyone else in the committee. I am not comfortable encouraging. I think that it should definitely be required. And so I look forward to reading amendments, sitting down and having conversations so that we can possibly get this bill to where everyone is comfortable. Committee members, any questions? Thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we will hear testimony in support of Assembly Bill 56. Please remember each person has 2 minutes to provide testimony. We will start here in Carson City. Is there anyone wishing to provide testimony in support of Assembly Bill 56? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Thank you, Chair. The public phone line is open and working, but we do not have any callers to provide testimony at this time.
Thank you. Next, we will hear testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 56. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to provide testimony in opposition? I don't see anyone. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Thank you, Chair. We currently have no callers to provide testimony.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to testify in the neutral position to Assembly Bill 56 here in Carson City? I don't see anyone. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Thank you, Chair. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Bradley, would you like to give any final remarks?
I apologize, I couldn't get my feet on.
It's okay.
Sarah Bradley, Deputy Executive Director on behalf of the Nevada State Board of Medical Examiners. We're definitely willing to work with the necessary constituents and individuals that we need to make this bill something that is more palatable to the committee. again, our intent was to make things easier for physicians, that are currently licensed and coming into our state with regard to continuing medical education. And so that was the reasoning for these changes. And again, we're willing to do what we need to do to work on this further. And so thank you for your comments.
And thank you for being with us today. We do have a shortage in physicians that we are all aware of and are working on, but the safety of our constituents, our residents in the whole entire state of Nevada is always first and foremost. Thank you for being with us today. I will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 56. I will now open up for public comment. Please address your remarks to issues that fall within the jurisdiction of this committee. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person. Public comment may be submitted in writing to the committee up to 24 hours after the hearing. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record and indicate your affiliation, if any. Is there any public comment here in Carson City? I don't see any. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give public comment? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, but we do not have any callers to provide comment at this time.
Thank you. Committee members, are there any comments before we adjourn? I don't see any. This concludes our meeting today. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, February 12th at 1:30. This meeting's adjourned.